Some things are worth waiting for. Northumbria is lucky that the dynamic King McGuinness is our Police and Crime Commissioner. We are lucky that in spite of her jobs and in spite of the change schedule, she is still here and is able to come and agreed to speak to us today. Kim's life has been interwoven into the fabric of the North East, and key to her innovative and impactful work as Police and Crime Commissioner is a focus on reducing reoffending. Kim, you're most welcome.
Well, thank you. I don't mind which way around Lindsay and I go. We're a bit used to it. And, you know, before I start, can I just say, Paul, do you know what? It's so brave to stand up and share that experience. And I wrote down on my piece of paper, what would have happened if Paul had the support he needed before he went to prison? And I think that's something that we all need to remember and we all need to commit to. And as for the brilliant work that Lindsay does and Dr. Khan, Dr. Khan, I think we should probably just all agree that we'll do things exactly how you said, and then we can all leave and things will be better. But, you know, it's been a really brilliant morning so far, so thank you very much. So, as Fiona said, I am your Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumberland, Tyne and Wear. And in a world where I think most people would say that I should simply advocate for locking more people up, I want to tell you why I think it's so vital that we focus on improving things for ex-offenders and why that often starts with a good job. So let me start with the basics. Too many people end up in prison because they're desperate and hard up. Too many people go back to prison because they're desperate and hard up. Now, if you're a victim of crime, I'm on your side. And I won't be making any excuses for that. But if we don't back organisations like the Oswin Project or employers like Timpson's, who we'll hear from later, we will never break the cycle of prison and criminality. For those of you who don't know what a Police and Crime Commissioner is, my job is to set the big priority issues for Northumbria Police. I can't send a cop car down your road if there's a drug problem, but I can say we should be targeting more organised crime, and actually that is one of the things that I think we should be targeting. And later this week, I'll unveil a new plan for policing in our part of the North East. It'll back neighbourhood policing, it'll commit to tackling antisocial behaviour, it'll ensure that there are support for women who are victims of violence and domestic abuse. That's what it should do. But for the first time ever, we're also going to say that you cannot arrest your way out of crime. And if we want to see real change, we have to fight poverty as well. The facts speak for themselves. Prison works in the sense that while someone's in prison, they're not committing a crime outside. But too often, that's pretty much where it ends. 2/3 of people sentenced to a prison term of 6 months or less go on to commit a further crime within a year of being released. The figure is over 60% for people sentenced for less than a year. The cycle goes on and nobody wants to break it because everybody thinks it's somebody else's responsibility. They certainly think it's the problem of the person that went to prison. I hear time and again, and we've heard them this morning, stories of prison leavers who've been treated disgracefully, sent home, without money, and sometimes without a way of even getting home. Shortly after I started this job, I went actually with Lindsay to meet a group of women who'd been in prison. They were working with Changing Lives, a brilliant charity who operate, I think, mainly across the north, on a project that used art to help them tell their story. And one of the things that really stood out to me was a video that we saw, and one in particular bit, where these women were researching women who were being incarcerated 100 years or more ago. And what was true then is true now. We as a country simply find it easier to deal with criminalising the symptoms of a difficult life than we do to make that life better. Part of my approach as Police and Crime Commissioner has been to ask the force and the criminal justice system to prioritise prevention. We need to identify those who are at risk of criminality and help them before they feel the need that they have no option but theft or fraud or violence. I want the whole system to acknowledge its role, the role that they play in prevention of crime. If police or the courts think that their work starts with a blue light and ends with a cell door slamming shut, then they are ignoring the evidence. And that evidence is clear, and I'll keep repeating it. Short-term prison sentences for non-violent crimes do not solve the problem. It's actually really worrying that the system is more focused on a jail sentence than it is on asking why on earth a woman had to steal food in the first place, or why there wasn't enough support in place to help a man with addiction or the debts that they can't handle. Which brings us to jobs. My office has got a violence reduction unit, and we're doing everything that we can to return Sure Start centres axed by government by stealth. We're investing in community hubs and youth work and education, but we have to go further. We need radical solutions. Next week, Lindsay and I will welcome a tech guru to HMP Northumberland because he thinks he can turn anyone into a developer in just 12 weeks. We're game for that. We're going to try it. It's different, it's radical, but we're going to try it. And I'm working with the co-op right now to identify those people who have almost nothing, who are so skint that they're stealing nappies and food. And we're training them up and we're getting them treatment and we're giving them jobs in the very shops that they targeted. Now that will not be popular everywhere. There are trolls who are going to tell you, and they're definitely going to tell me, that we should be locking these people up and not rewarding them with a job. And I'm clear, I will always fight for the resources to put more police on our streets. But there's no solution to rising crime that involves locking people up who are so skint that they're stealing food to feed their children. And it's an even poorer solution if we let it turn into a revolving door, as Dr. Khan described. So yes, let's be radical. Let's use the money handed to us to stop gangs and say, if we spend some of it on finding work for these families, we'll cut those gangs off. They won't have a business model and lives will be improved. And that's exactly why my violence reduction unit is doing what it's doing with the likes of Bev at Recruitment Junction, because what prison leavers actually are people who are vulnerable to criminality, who can be supported to be successful and not to commit crime. We're finding former offenders and others at risk of criminality and training them up for interviews and jobs. And our employment pathway offers them diversion away from the criminal justice system by providing training and employment support that is individualised and can improve lives and absolutely prevents reoffending. And understandably, as we've heard already today, there are many challenges involved in this process. Ensuring prison leavers have their right to work document just is one of the single biggest barriers. Supporting them with a suitable place to live, clothing for interviews, transport to get to where they need to be. These are simple things for most of us, and they're the absolute minimum that anyone deserves. But for those leaving prison, they're all too often all too complicated, and it takes all too long. And we need solutions to make it better. What we've seen from the Oswin project is that when this process starts in prison, it's a lot easier, but they, like my office, have limited resources. In the government's Beating Crime Plan, ministers have made a commitment to reducing reoffending. Well, in case, just on the off chance, Dominic Raab is listening, I'll say here publicly what I'd say privately. Help us solve these issues, and it'll go a long way to reaching that goal. We know how important those first few days and weeks are upon release to ensure a prison leaver doesn't fall back into old ways. Having a good home and a good job are a fundamental part of preventing reoffending on release. And I saw the effects of that when I visited the brewer Green King, who give ex-offenders in Northumberland, Tyne and Wear and nationally a job on release. They are a great example of a business that wants ex-offenders to fill vacancy. Yes, it gives them a second chance, but it's also just great business sense for Green King. They start the process early, they go into prisons, they deliver employment sessions, and before offering a range of opportunities on day release and then back in the community. And they've seen the benefits and reaped the rewards from this approach, landing high-skilled and highly motivated individuals who want to work and contribute to the local economy. And this is where the role of specialist organisations is so important. To work with prison leavers, to prepare them for interviews, for trial shifts, or perhaps simply the transition, making sure that they have the help and support required to overcome any challenges that they face on release, whether that's emotional or mental or simply logistical challenges. So I'll continue to back those who back prison leavers. If we reduce the impact of poverty, we will reduce the number of people entering the criminal justice system. We will reduce the number of victims of crime. It is that simple. And job creation is the #1 way out of poverty. And that's why work such as this done by the Osborne Project is so vital. We know from the evidence that others that steady employment, particularly if it offers a sense of achievement, can turn lives around. Sometimes those jobs need to be linked to other support packages like housing or addiction treatment. But a good job, is always a key part of the picture. A good job stops poverty. A good job stops reoffending. Thank you.